Good morning. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Magic in Mind. My name is Maggie Rose Cunningham, and I'm your host for today, where we are going to be looking at your magician self, the part of your magical self responsible for change making. And we're going to be looking at why this part of the magical self needs our permission to fail. So this is a live session. So if you're joining me live, and I can see some people coming in right now, please do say hello in the chat box. Let me know, is the magician a dominant part for you? Are you confident in your magician? Do you use it a lot, or is it part of your magical self that's underexpressed? If you are watching the recording, you can also leave your comments in the chat box, and we'll always try and get back to you as well. So give me a wave, and yeah, if you're watching the recording, please do hashtag replay so that I know that you are here with me. So I'm going to tell you a story. Love a story. And this is a story of a little girl. She's a little girl. She lived in a castle, those big, massive, magical fairy tale castles. And she lived with her father and with her mother. And the servants of the castle used to say to her, they used to say, "Oh, your father, he was a joyful man. He was exuberant, but life changed and things changed for him, and he'd fallen into despair. He'd fallen into despair and malaise. He didn't really speak to her very much, and he really left everything to her mother. Mother was diametrical opposite to him. She was incredibly controlling. Like everything needed to be exactly the way that she wanted it to be. She had incredibly high standards, and everything revolved around her. This is the way that I want it to be. Now, that village is not in a good place at my window as I look out of it. Move it. And it was done. That type of mother. And the little girl could do nothing right. Everything that she tried, she was too loud, she was too clumsy, she was in the wrong place, she did her lessons wrong, and she used to just sit there and she would cry when her nurse would be putting her to bed. And as she got older, she would, try and sort of adapt herself, sort of make herself smaller. Make myself smaller. I'm going to fit in with what it is that my mother wants me. And she'd wake up each morning and she'd think, I can try, I can do this. And every night she would go to bed disappointed. And she was lying in bed one night and she said to her nurse, "Oh no, I really wish that I had beautiful curly blonde hair and blue eyes and pink cheeks and those sort of rosebud pink lips that stepmother wants for me." And the nurse said to her, "No, you don't." She said, "No, you don't. You don't want that. And I'll tell you why you don't want that." She said, "You never knew your biological mother because she died when you were born. But your mother was she wasn't just a great queen. She was a wonderful queen, but she was also a magician. She had great magic, potent magic available to her. And she had wanted a child for the longest of times. And she wove a spell. And it was her greatest desire that you should be born with black ebony hair, skin as white as snow, and deep, rich, red lips as red as blood. And that's what you have." And the little girl went, "Oh." She'd heard about her mother, but she never knew her. So she's always thought about the queen as being her mother. She said, "Thank you." She said, "Tell me about my mother. Tell me other things about my mother." And the nurse was like, "Well, I shouldn't really. But I'll tell you a little bit about your mother. I don't want to be disrespectful. So your father, he was so happy when your mother was alive. And when she died, he really, he never really forgave himself. He thought that he could have done something differently and looked after her better. And maybe, that she wanted a child too much. And that was too much for her. And he never really got over that. And then he married the queen because he knew that we needed to have somebody in charge. But your mother was in charge in a very different way. She went about things in a very different way. She would bring all of the people in, at least once a week. Leaders from all over the country would come, and we would talk about what needs to happen next and how it's going to work. And we would talk about waterways and irrigation, and she had advisors, so many advisors, and that she would make her decisions. Don't get me wrong, she was totally in her power and in charge, but she wove in whatever was needed. So sometimes it was consultation, and sometimes it was bringing people from other countries for peace treaties, and sometimes she wove magics to bring the harvest through. Great bountiful harvest. And your mother now is obviously also a great enchantress and magician, but in a different way, right? She likes it to be her way. And the little girl, who was, of course, called Snow White, said, thank you, nurse. And she lay in bed. She thought about this, and she thought of how, the nurse hasn't said it, but she thought to herself, well, if I hadn't been born, father would still be happy, and my mother would still be alive. So that was not a good wish that she made. And it's lovely that she wanted me to have this hair and these lips and this skin and everything, but she's not with me. My mother now is with me, and she doesn't like me the way I am. So that was a mistake that my mother made, to want these things for me. And all I can do is to try and be even smaller, even less, and not to fail. If I do what the queen now wants, then I'll get it right. And so obviously we know where the story takes Snow White out into the forest. The queen, her stepmother, looks into her magic mirror. Notice she doesn't look into her heart. She looks into her magic mirror and decides that Snow White is a threat and sends her out and says, dispose of her. And she goes and she meets the dwarves, and she stays there. Absolutely, stay in as long as you need, they said. And they said, we go out and we do mining. That's what we love to do. We're miners, and we mine for diamonds during the day. And so we can help you to discover, what it is that you want to do. What do you like? We can help you with that. And she said, oh, no. What is it that you would like me to do? She said, I can see that your house needs tending, and I'll do that. Would that work? Oh, yes, that would be fine. She said, oh, they're happy. Oh, and that makes me happy, she thought to herself. And then they said, but our house is quite small. We don't even have a bed that's the right size for you. So we can build you something else. We could knock this one down. That's no problem. We'll make something that is the right size for you as well. She says, no. I am very happy in this tiny, she doesn't say uncomfortable. She's thinking it. Very happy in this tiny bed. It makes you happy, and this is your home. You've chosen it the way you want to. I wouldn't want to be a burden. I'm very happy the way it is. Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely. Just I'm making them happy for the first time in my life. Making people happy. She's so joyous about this. Now, the dwarves were obviously right to be a little bit worried that Snow White was obviously a little bit of a pleaser, let's say. And so they were very wise when they said to her, if anyone comes to the house, and they're, and you don't trust them, trust your gut instinct, don't invite them in, don't do the thing, anything like that. But Snow White, by this point, she's addicted to making people happy, isn't she? And when that little old woman comes and she says, here, have the laces for the corset, and here, comb your hair and the red apple, Snow White has no way in which she's going to do anything other than please the person who's in front of her right there in the moment. It's really not surprising. So obviously she falls down, supposedly dead, so the dwarves think, and they put her in the crystal coffin. And then along comes the handsome prince on his horse. He lifts her, and they look, no, she's dead, there's nothing we could do. And he's like, oh, but she's so beautiful. And I've been on a quest, looking for the person, looking for my true love. And I've been brought here to kiss his fair, and obviously the apple is dislodged and all of the things. And she wakes up, and what do you think happens next? Bearing in mind, obviously we know that, they get married happily ever after. What do you think actually happens next in terms of how Snow White is going to show up for her prince? And that's what we're going to be exploring today, is how does a child, a child who's born ready to play and explore and make, do all of the things, how do they become somebody who is not able to access their magician self, or someone who is using the magician self in a harmful way? And this is important for me. I'll tell you why this is important for me. So when I did the parts of the magical selves quiz, I put it out and I did my road testing of the quiz with the general population, let's say. I went out, I did ex-colleagues and friends and people like that, who I was trying to find like a wide variety of people. And when the results came back, it showed that all of the parts of the magical self were equally represented. And I deliberately didn't do it with that many people who would self-identify as being spiritual or healers or seers or any of those things. So I wanted to see what would happen in the general population. And I got a lovely even spread. And then I launched the quiz into my wonderful, fabulous groups of people who are out there in the world wanting to use their magic for good. Now, that's what I'm here for. I want to use my magic for good. I want to heal. I want to be able to use my seership skills. I want to be able to journey out and work in partnership with spirit, all of the things that I think, yeah, that's what we need in the world. What happened was that the results of the quiz changed dramatically. So that at this point, only 5% of people who fill in the quiz have magician as their most dominant magical self. And I might have shared with you before that I believe that one of the reasons for that is because our little magical selves were born into the world, and we see examples of the overexpressed magician, the stepmother queen. I am in charge. Everything is the way that I'm going to say. I'm going to use my magic for selfish ends. Think about all of the people who are like in power, and how many of them you're thinking, yeah, absolutely, they're totally in connection at a soul level with what our human community needs, what our planet needs, what animals need. We're using our resources really wisely. We've got equal distribution of those resources. We're solving problems together. We're looking to alleviate suffering. And so we see that out in the world, and we think that's what it means to be magical. Right? But actually, there's quite a lot going on in the story of Snow White. I'm going to give a couple of examples. I've given an example of the stepmother, who is the overexpressed magician. Yeah. But one of the things that's interesting about her is that it is she has magic that's available to her, and you could argue that she's using her seership skills because she's got her magic mirror. But this is what I would say to you, is that for me, when we have full access to our seer self, we can absolutely use tools to enhance that connection, to support us. I love this tool, I love that tool, but we don't rely on those tools. So when I think of the magic mirror saying, Snow White's fairer than you, in whose eyes? And I would say that magic mirror is a perfect reflection of what a lot of people see on things like social media now. This is the normal, perfect example of beautiful, whatever it is, and you are not it, designed to make you feel bad. If the stepmother, the evil queen, was fully expressed in her magical self and had access to the other parts of her magical self, she would have access to her seer. And her seer would say to her, the only person that's important in terms of how you feel, in terms of expressing yourself and your beauty and feeling like, is you. This external reference is not your seer. That is what would be happening. And so the evil queen is a really good example of what can happen for us in society, where we have people who might have access to the magician self, but not to the seer self. When I think about the way in which the magical self forms, we start with the seer. Those of you who've done some of the seer trainings with me will know that we're born with our little seer, the seer that says, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what I choose. And so Snow White she hasn't got as far because she's pushing her seer down all of the time. She's saying, this is what I want, but that can't be right. And so this happens through generations. Generation after generation after generation learns to squash the parts of the magical self down. You could see that with the king, that he experiences a trauma in his life. He experiences the loss of his wife, and he believes somewhere that if he was fully expressed as his magician self, he would have been able to save her. And this is a really important part of recognizing the theme that I wanted to bring to you today, which is the theme of why we need to allow our magician selves to fail. And one of the reasons for that is because they're going to. Because when we are fully participating in the world and we have access to the other parts of our magical selves, we will know that we are not in control of everything. No, we are absolutely not in control of everything. Does that mean that we're not going to do wonderful, fabulous magics? No. No. Snow White's mother could well have known, maybe, that she wasn't going to make it, but she still wanted her child, and she still had huge wishes for her child. She's like, just because it's not going to go fully the way that I want it to go, I am still going to show up with everything. And give my child everything that I possibly can. So she's expressed fully in her magic. Now, we can hypothesize. We don't know because Snow White doesn't know her. But the Snow White reads her father's self-identified failure. So he sees himself as a failure. My magician has failed. I'm just going to crumple. I'm just going to crumple inwards. I'm not going to do anything anymore because I'm a failure. She sees that and she goes, oh no, he's not the failure because I need him to not be a failure because he's my parent. I must be the failure is what she sees. She brings that in. And the evil queen goes, well, I'm not a failure, but the only way I can carry on succeeding through the lens of the magic mirror, because I don't have access to my seer self, is by doing really horrible and awful things. And so the requirement for the magician is so much that we are able to forgive failure. So this is one of the really important keys to the magician. I'm going to have a little look at the chat box now and see what's coming up for people. So have a little feel into this. Have a feel into this idea of the way in which we see failure being demonstrated in all sorts of different ways by people who are have power over us. They have power over us. And when we're tiny and we're small, we need to believe that the people who have power over us are safe. Because if we don't believe that, we're not safe. So therefore, we look like, what does the failure mean? Where is the failure? And you can see that Snow White's like, right, rather than that being my father's failure, I'm going to make it my failure. Rather than it being my stepmother's failure, I'm going to make it my failure. And the only person that she's able to sort of impart some other idea of failure to is her own mother, because she's not there. She's not there. And so in a way, she sort of becomes an internalized mother figure, also an example of failure. So what I'd like you to think about with this is about the way in which powerful people, and this might be mothers or fathers or teachers, it might be lawyers or doctors or caregivers of some description, or people who are out there and they're ostensibly there to support you. It might be officials, might be the police, whoever it is, people who in our society, whether that's in your family structure or it's in your community structure, it's in your government structure, you have seen them fail you. In one way or another. They haven't lived up to your expectations. You might not even know what your expectations are, but you know that they're not doing it right. Just have a little feel into that as we're going through. And I'm going to look at the comments now and let me know what your thoughts are there on how that idea of failure might stop us from stepping into our power. If we don't have many role models of somebody who is uber perfect, they've used their magic totally for good and they're wonderful and they're perfect. How might that stop us from then stepping into our own power as magicians? I can see people say, Maggie, you're saying my magician, I think, is trying to express themselves. Yeah, well, good. And I hope this session will help you with that, Maggie. I hope that will help you with that. And Christy, you're saying, I'm more magician than I think I am. I'm working on embracing that magician inside and becoming more skillful. Yeah, we're going to move on to that in a moment, this idea of skill. So at the moment, let's have this feeling into is what might be stopping you from embracing the magician. And one of the things I think is really important for us to recognize is that because the magician is the change maker part of the self, it's the part of the magical self that is in many ways on the outside, because it's the part that's interacting with the world around us. So the evil queen's relationship with the magic mirror is a private one. We only know about it because we've been listening to the story. For all we know, no one has ever seen her go up to her chamber and whisper to the magic mirror. So they can't see that she isn't actually accessing her seer. That she's not going down inside and feeling into the belly and saying, okay, what is it that my knowing says about me from a place that is, I don't have any past trauma. I don't have any beliefs that have been instilled in me. I wasn't maybe I've been taught all of this way of being in the world by other people in my life. So I've looked at all of those outside patterns and I've gone, that is the only way I can be powerful. How that she's rocked up to a kingdom where everyone is like, oh, the other queen was so unbelievably amazing and wonderful and brilliant. And she's like, well, I've got to meet that standard. Totally got to meet that standard. The magician, when they don't have access to the other parts of the magical self, they're not just dominant and controlling and have to be in charge of everything from a place of aggression. It's also perfectionism. I need to be perfect. I need to be perfect. I can't have any failures. No failures are allowed, because I don't have access to the other parts of the magical self that to me would say, this is a journey, this is a learning experience. So that's an important part, is recognizing that when we judge the magician, we're not just judging the magician, we're judging all of the other internal workings that are happening with the mystic who's out there supporting that access to faith and to evolution of what's possible, and that connection with spirit, wisdom beyond yourself, which the previous queen was doing, wasn't she? She was saying, my mystic believes that the answers are out there and I haven't found them inside my seer, so I'm going to go out and ask somewhere else. That's the mystic saying, I can be curious about this, and no one's going to say I don't know the answers, because I don't know the answers. My job is to find the solutions. It's not to have all of the answers. That's what the mystic says. Obviously, the seer has that access to the deep intuition and authentic self. That comes from the seer, and the sage has access to the wisdom. I don't have the answers, but we've got a massive library that I will now go and read and learn all of the wisdom of my ancestors and apply it to this situation. And of course, the healer, who is so connected to the subtle nuances of like interpersonal dynamics and the weather systems and all of those things, and is working in partnership with the seer all of the time to say, no, this information from here and this information from here. But when the magician doesn't have that, everything has to be got to be in my control, totally in my control. Is the way that they work. So thinking about that in terms of looking at power, recognizing that it can't. What is I'm trying to say? The overexpressed or hidden magician, when they are overexpressed because they don't have access to the other parts of this magical self, or they're hidden and pushed down, normally comes from trauma. It will come from trauma and from a pushing away of your own power. I'm too frightened to wield my own power because I've experienced wounding from power in the past. So we've got indoctrination since childhood, people telling me that magic is make-believe, and society today telling us that we're just flesh and bone, that we're not creation and the creators. Yeah. So this is a denial, sort of denial of your true self, which creates a massive dissonance, like straight away, doesn't it, when that happens to us. And that in many ways is a wounding. That's a wounding to the seer, who we need in order to access the balanced magician. Absolutely. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that with Snow White as well. So that is the magician wounding the seer, who says, I can experience these things and know that they are there, but you are telling me otherwise, which is your magician coming and wielding authority over me. Therefore, am I going to access my magician if that's what I think the magician is? No. And so looking at those things and saying, okay, so where can I see examples of the magician acting positively in the world? That is an important part. And it's also important to recognize that the only way that we will change that is by is by saying, I've been wounded and I've been pushed down by society. But unless I bring my internal workings out and I allow myself to be visible, no one's going to, my magician is totally inactive and no one else is going to receive the benefits of my delicious, fabulous, amazing magic. And I'm not saying by any means, as a result of this session, go out and be like, da-da, look at me, my magic self. No, but I'm saying that's a journey. That's a journey that we need to take. And that access to the magician self it's often lost because of the fact that we need to do that repairing of the wounds of the other parts of the magical self. And we're obviously talking about the magician and the seer particularly today. Okay, so some steps that we need to take in order to start accessing our magician more fully. The first one isn't an action from the magician, really. Well, everything that is a doing has some aspect of magician in it. But this is really coming from the healer self, and this is forgiveness. No, this is forgiveness. Because every time we judge somebody else, we judge their magician. You know? And if we're judging their magician, think about this as being like an archetype. We judge the magician, and therefore we judge our own. You know? So this is done to allow us access to our magic. So if you think about that for Snow White and the journey that she might need to take, no, the journey of forgiveness of her mother because she left her. No, does that mean that she was a failure? No, there might be anger in there. Now, all of these things happened to me because you left. There might be guilt there. She's going to have to forgive herself as well. But it's that forgiveness of those who have been in power and have wielded it in such a way that they have damaged and wounded our own magician. So forgiveness of the stepmother, you know, in whatever way you need to come to that. I forgive you, because if I don't forgive you, I can't embrace my own power. You know, and of the father. You know, and almost like a recognition, you know what, it wasn't my fault. And yes, my mother died, but I was still here. No, you've got to go through that whole journey there of saying, okay, I've got to get to the point of saying it's not my fault, forgiving myself. It might be his fault. Probably is his fault. He was the grown-up. You know, he was the one I was trusting. He was my only parent left. How do I forgive him so that I can access my magician power? No, and not work on the assumption that I'm not, when it comes to the moment of crisis, I'm going to fail. Because that's what he took on board. That was the belief that he took on board. And because he believed himself to be a failure, that he therefore disconnected from his daughter. So that is the act of forgiveness is incredibly important. And we might recognize through that we have had generation after generation after generation that has worked incredibly hard to squash or imbalance our magical selves. You know, squash the seer, squash the magician, squash the healer, squash the sage, squash the mystic. Now, they might let certain parts out, you know, and they will find their way through in one way, some way or another, but we might end up with a hell of a lot of dominant, imbalanced magicians, or dominant, imbalanced sages can come through quite strongly, or, you know, crazy narcissistic leaders who are fully like seer magician with nothing else going on there because they've never taken that journey into maturity through the rest of the self. And I'm not going to go off on that one now because that's a really big one too. So this is a generational wounding, and we're simply saying, well, what can I do to move beyond, to step beyond that into a space where I am able to claim my magician self? In order to do that, first of all, we need to be able to forgive previous failures. Yeah, failures that were not ours. They were the failures of people who we relied on to provide us with like safe, supportive environments where we could thrive and grow, and they didn't, and that squashed us. You know? I was saying, yeah, but you were squashed as well. What do I need to do in order to forgive so that I can move forward with that? And then the second piece is to allow failure of for yourself. And the way that I think about this is as we journey with our magical selves, you know, we can start to create spaces where we give ourselves permission to try and to fail. And you can think about this with Snow White, with the sort of small, the small traumas that she was receiving all of the time. I try this, I did this creative project, and stepmother says, no, that's terrible, go away, terrible failure, or you've done whatever it is that you're doing. Because the magician is responsible for that expressive, I'm going to try something different, I'm going to try better, I'm going to push myself further, and it's the action. It's the magician that gets wounded first. When someone says, oh, well, no, that looks terrible. What sort of idea was that? And so learning to do that with small things, and say, I'm going to try this. I'm not confident about this. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to use my voice. So many people who I work on with Awaken, have not used their voice for like self-healing work or magical work before. And they're like, I'm going to try it. And giving yourself permission to fail, because we don't emerge perfect first time, if there is ever such a thing as perfect anyway. And if we recognize that so many of us have been stunted in that growth journey of being able to play and fail, so many of us are sort of pushed into that. I'm going to learn strategy. So Snow White learns how to please, doesn't she? She learns how to be the pleaser. And her father just gives all of his power away. I'm going to give my power away. And then the stepmother learns I'm going to be like fully in control at all times and be horrible and aggressive and deal with all of those things. And they learn that and they stick with it and they become rigid and they don't grow anymore. So we're allowing our little baby magician, our child magician, to play and to fail in safe ways, so that then we start to build up some of that resilience. So sometimes, you're gonna fail, and the next time you're gonna fail better. I'm gonna fail better. I'm going to fail better. It's going to be brilliant. And the truth is that if we talk about magical technique, if we talk about magic and ritual, which I totally believe should be part of everybody's change-making skill set, not the only part. I have quite a big, expansive version of what magic is in my mind, that it is anything that allows us to bring change into the world, that is like aligned with who we are, with our purpose, is, to my mind, magic. It's simply that in our society, we have a very, very, very narrow definition of what is acceptable in terms of how we bring about change. I would quite like it if everyone was able to say, yes, I'm going to go and I'm going to do the job interview, but I will have done my manifestation work beforehand to visualize the perfect job for myself and to bring that in. And I'm going to do a little bit of spell work beforehand to bring in the confidence and my performance at the interview. That's going to be fantastic. And of course, I'm going to do all of my revision ahead of the interview, and I'm going to think about what I'm going to wear. And it's all of those things. All of those things are the magic, And it's when we are fully expressed in our magician, we don't give ourselves a loophole for failure. So the loophole for failure can turn into the self-saboteur. The loophole for failure is where you say, okay, I'm going to show up to the job interview, but there's going to be something that I haven't done as well as I could have. And there is a very good reason why we do this. And we do it to protect ourselves, so that if we fail, we can say, oh, well, it was, I knew it. It was because I didn't do this thing. And and it is the explanation, isn't it? What it means is that we don't bring our full magic, because it can be really hard when we say, I did my absolute best and I still failed. And this is why the magician needs permission to fail, to say, you know what, I did my absolute best. I failed. Does that mean I'm going to show up tomorrow and not do my absolute best? No. That's part of the healing that we need to do for the magician. And recognizing that when that magician rocks up, bringing their everything, they bring every single other part of the magical self with them. Now, the magician is the center of our responsibility, our sovereignty in the world, because it's the part that takes action. But it is relying so heavily on the other parts of the magical self to come through. So let me know how that is landing for you. If you're here with me live, let me know what your thoughts are on failure and your relationship to failure. Are you somebody who maybe, no, I'm going to take myself to this point, but I'm not going to go any further because the chances of failure become higher, which is really all it is, isn't it? It's sort of saying, okay, if I stay in my comfort zone, my chances of failure are relatively low because I'm in my comfort zone. if I move outside of my comfort zone, the further I move outside of my comfort zone, the higher my chances of failure are, because it's unknown territory. Does that make me a failure? No, it doesn't. Now, somebody else might say, oh, well, it makes you a failure because you went so far out of your comfort zone and you tried that thing and that was ridiculous to try that. But you might say, well, no, I calculated the odds and I thought, well, I might have a 10% chance. Just go for it, see how that works. Doesn't work, I'll fail next time and I'll fail better. Yeah, is the way that we might think about it. So are you somebody who builds loopholes for yourself, or maybe you've got a bit of a self-saboteur who comes in, which is a perfect way of saying, oh, I'm letting my magician out. Oh, it's really scary. Oh, self-saboteur comes in. I'm just going to pull that back a little bit. Does that happen for you? No. What's your relationship with failure? Is the second question, to think about here. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to take you back to Snow White, she's just woken up, she's just woken up and she's opened her eyes and she's gone, oh, handsome prince. He looks really nice, and he's telling me that he's come on a quest for his true love. I can fill that void. I can be that. So I can make him happy. I can squash him. I know exactly how to squash myself in all of the ways that I need to squash myself, sort of twist myself. Some people say they're like, turn myself into a pretzel. To be what he needs to make him happy. And I never have to take responsibility for any of it, because it will be him. So she's there and he's like, oh, hello, I've come, been on this quest. I was told by my went and consulted with the seer, and we did some work together. I felt inside and I was like, this is the right time for me to go out and to find the person who I want to be with, and somebody who can be by my side. I don't expect them to be everything, but to be there and to help to rule my kingdom and with me. And this is where I was taken. He says, this is where I was taken. So he's like, no, tell me about you. I'd love to know about you. Tell me, what do you like? What do you do for fun? What's your job? And all of those things. And she's been like, well, I don't know, really. Whatever you like, that's fine with me. He's been like, oh, okay. It's, well, when you've done stuff in the past, what are you good at? She says, I'm sure I can learn whatever it is that you want me to learn. I've done a good job with the dwarves and with the animals. They seemed okay, and the dwarves are a bit like, well, she did cater very well to what we wanted, but we didn't really get to know her that well, if we're honest. Sorry, Prince. And the prince says, this is what I've realized is, this isn't the end of my quest. This is the beginning of my quest, and my quest is going to fail right now unless you're able to take your own quest. And this isn't a quest that you can do with me. This is a quest that you need to do for yourself. So I'm going to invite you, Snow White. I'd love to get to know you better and to sort of see if we are indeed destined to be together. But I need 3 things from you before that can happen. I would love it if you would go on a quest and come back. And then I've got 3 questions for you when you come back. Those 3 questions are, what do you like? What do you like? I don't want to know. Do you like ice cream? Do you like staying in bed in the morning? Do you like swimming in ice cold water, every Sunday? What it is, I want to know, what do you like? So go out there and explore and find that out for yourself, And then he says, then the second thing I want to know is, what do you want? What do you want? What's going to not just get you up in the morning and you're going to do the things that you enjoy, but the things that motivate you to do the stuff that you don't enjoy, but because it's important, you'll get over the hurdles and you'll do the tricky stuff. What do you want? The magician is the wielder of our will. That's what they do. That's my aside, by the way. That wasn't the prince speaking. And it is, and this is the third thing. How do you get things done? How do you get things done? Because I've got a whole kingdom to run and I can't run it on my own. And The villagers are asking me loads of questions about like irrigation and things like that. And there's so many different ways in which I could go around about working with them to get the irrigation system up and running. And how we do it, really important to me. He said, there's a kingdom, you might know it. It's just at the edge of this forest. And there's a queen there. She's like renowned. That she just, even if she doesn't know what she's talking about, she'll still like just say, no, it's my way, it's my way. Her people are, they're sick, they're starving, the land is being run into the ground, but she's always like, no, it's me, it's me, it's me. And Snow White's a bit like, I think I know that queen. So, those are the three things that I want you to go onto your quest, go and do your quest and let me know. And I'm really hoping that when we come together, we might have some things that we like together, but we can do, I'm supporting you, whatever it is that you want to do. What I don't want is for you to just do what I like, I see what you like. And then what we want, I think that's quite important to me. It's important that, we probably want at least some of the same things so that we can support each other, in getting those things. And then the how we get things done. I can't be with anyone. I can't give power to anyone who isn't going to do things and get things done in a way that accords with my values. That's my responsibility to my kingdom. So let me know. Look forward to hearing from you. And if you need anything, he's like happy to, take the dwarves with you if you want to, but don't rely on them to make the decisions. They're there to support you. They want to support you. They're out there to do that. So those are the three questions that I'm going to invite you to feel into. Now, the what I like question is very much in the space of the seer. Now, what is it that I like? What gives me pleasure? What fills me up with joy? What gets my juices flowing? That's the seer. What do I want? That's where we start to move a little bit more into, well, all of the parts of the magical self can come into this realm. The mystic might have the vision of where we're moving forward, and the seer might say, well, this is what needs to happen first. And the healer might say, I can absolutely feel that in order to get this vision done and the kingdom to be the way that it is, we need to do this, we need to do this, and bring these things in, and this system needs tweaking, and there's so much healing that needs to be done. And the sage will say, I've read so much, I know so much, I've spoken to people and consulted with them, so much wisdom available to us to support that. And then obviously the magician goes out and does it. And then the how is our space of exploration for the magician. And just as I said with the seer has so many tools available to them, to oracle cards, tarot, or runes, obviously, that you can use to access the deep wisdom of the seer. The magician is the same. There will be techniques that you prefer to use to get things done. And some of those will be about rituals and spell work that you do. And some of those will be about your presence, with people, whether you're like, go on right now. I'm not saying that I've done that on occasion. Or then, right, rooms need tidying. How are we going to get this done? Go team. Those are all parts of the magician self expressing who you want to be in the world, how you want to show up in the world. So the zone of the magician isn't just however exciting and delicious it is, the bind rune that you've made or the magic circle that you've cast. It is every action that you take, which is why we need to give our magicians permission to fail. Because when every action that we take is part of the magician's self, we're never going to get it right all of the time, but we can fail and then fail better, and grow our power and combine these sort of two incredibly powerful and important spheres for the magical self, our purpose and our power, bring them together. So I hope that this has been a helpful exploration of the magician self and why it is that the magician self, why we can have a difficult relationship sometimes with our magician selves, particularly if we are sensitive and we are our little magical beings ourselves, because we're sensitive to all of the things that are going wrong and all of the stuff, and the woundings can be incredibly deep, but also why it's important for us to be able to reclaim that and to go through that process of forgiveness and providing permission for failure, and starting to really deepen into that connection between the seer and the magician, if that feels as if that's absent, and then bringing in the other parts of the magical self as well. So thank you to everybody who has joined me, and for your lovely comments and feedback, and keep it coming. If you are watching the recording, just put hashtag replay and do pop your comments in and pop your questions in, and we'll do our best to keep this conversation going.